Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People. In today's episode, middle-aged Karen parked in the mother parking spot and confronted me about how I'm not entitled to it. You do know this is first class, don't you? Entitled mom encourages child to ask for our window seat. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Middle-aged Karen parked in the mother parking spot and confronted me about how I'm not entitled to it. Hey there, this happened yesterday at my local Loblaws. Most grocery stores here in Canada have a few expectant mothers parking spaces that are intended for pregnant women or parents with babies to use. They are generally closer to the door, usually beside the handicapped spaces or cart corral. I am currently 7 months pregnant and was following a Lexus into the parking lot, and I plan to use one of these spaces. The Lexus ahead of me took this space. I didn't think much of it and parked about 4 to 5 spaces down from it. As I'm walking into the store, the woman in the Lexus, mid-60s, saw that I was very visibly pregnant and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize," and laughed at me. I'm hormonal and it probably wasn't necessary, but I responded with, "You're obviously not that sorry since you parked in a spot you shouldn't have." She proceeded to get about a foot from me and scream at me, "F***CKU, you're not entitled to this spot." I was caught off guard and started crying, not proud of this, but the hormones are intense sometimes. Thankfully, bystanders don't like it when people yell and physically intimidate a pregnant lady, and about 5 people came over to rip her a new one, telling her she's way out of line and I'm the only person they see who is entitled to the space. One gentleman, my hero, actually called her a Karen. She got back into her car and left. I just don't understand why she felt the need to confront me. Did she think apologizing for her intentionally shitty behavior would make her look less like a Karen? Like I wasn't going to say anything, I just assumed she needed it because she had a baby or whatever, but she didn't. So that's my crazy Karen story, mild compared to most here, but it was honestly scary. People don't apologize when they are obviously in the wrong anymore, they double down and make it somehow your fault. People have no accountability anymore at all. True, think of the Spanish soccer/football guy threatening to sue the players and the women he assaulted, and if it's true, but allegedly his mom went on a hunger strike inside a church till this hunt on her boy is over. Instead of saying, "Well, maybe it was unwanted, I am truly sorry," I'm gonna take a step back and reflect. Citing a Karen in the wild can be surprising. No shame in being caught off guard. For the bystanders, it's been my experience that Lexus drivers feel they are entitled to behave the way they want to because they own a Lexus. Tesla is the new Lexus. They're only behind BMW and Mercedes drivers, in my experience. When I was 9 months pregnant, I parked in one of those spots, and as I was getting out of my car, a lady came stomping up to me, clearly looking for a fight. I closed the door and she saw my stomach and her whole demeanor changed, and she smiled nicely, then turned and started towards her car. Some people take those parking spots very seriously. I think she might have fought off people parking there who weren't pregnant. I can't imagine how that would have turned out if I was less pregnant looking. I'm a father of a toddler and a wonderful 10.5F, and I do not park in those spots when I'm with her. It's for people like pregnant women or a single parent with their hands full. My eldest assists me when needed, so my hands are never truly full, like they were back when she was a toddler and I was a fresh parent. By the way, my toddler is also wonderful. I blame their mother. You do know this is first class, don't you? A few years back, I went traveling in my younger years. I was looking forward to getting home, so I booked a seat in a first-class train carriage as I had just come off a 30-plus-hour flight and I was exhausted. When I got on the train home and found my seat, a man, who was maybe in his 60s, turned around and asked me, "You do know this is the first-class carriage, don't you?" Granted, I did look and smell awful after not having had a shower for 35 hours. I responded, yes, I'm fully aware because I booked a seat in here. He gave me a snooty look and just grunted at me. After resuming my seat, he then had the gall to ask me to stow his bag at the racks at the top like I was his slave or something. Reluctantly, I did it. I was young. Now I'm older, I am still fuming about this now, and I would have told him where to go. Oh, and the whole train journey, he was on his phone talking about party conferences, so I assume he was a politician, which literally explains everything. I had to get this off my chest. Cheeky me would have had the gall to be astonished. No. You don't say. My goodness me. What does this mean? Whatever shall we do? And more in that vein, if he hasn't hastily looked away from my shocked countenance. Then just plop down in my seat with a huge sigh and say, I don't care, really, do you? Then the rest is up to him. One day I may get the chance to act on this. I wait. Carrot, this is the way. Get him all riled up too and say shh. I don't want them to find me and confiscate my drugs. Not the cops, some Italians I beat when they were looking the other way. You like Coke? Order a Coke from the attendant. Ah yes, the trick here is to explain to them really slowly that this is first class and then ask if they need special assistance to get to the economy section. Added points for calling the stewardess over and explaining to her that the man is mentally handicapped and doesn't know that this is first class. The second option is to say it was first class until they arrived with the manners of a chimp and now you're not so sure. I'm always hoping for someone to ask, do you know who I am? Then I can announce to whole surrounding area, this person doesn't know who he is. Could someone please help them? My husband and I had the same thing happen on the Zurich to Munich train. Tired, jet-lagged, we'd landed in Paris from Keflavik the prior afternoon and had the early morning train to Zurich. My response to the snotty Swiss woman who confronted us was a cheerful, I know, and I'm so happy you can afford the ticket. Is it your first time? She didn't have much to say after that. This is first class, sir, have the porter handle your bag. Times like these, you just make hard eye contact and fart loudly to establish dominance. The older I get, the clearer it becomes to me that the correct response to most questions from strangers is, why do you ask? Entitled mom encourages child to ask for our window seat. This was at the beginning of the pandemic, just before countries were beginning their lockdowns. The wife and I were visiting our families in our country of birth and had to rush back to our home country. The airline had cancelled our pre-booked flights and rerouted us via 3 other flights across various countries. This also meant that the seats we'd booked wouldn't be the ones we'd be getting. To say it was a nightmare of a journey wouldn't be an exaggeration. While the first flight was barely 3 hours, the second flight was 9 hours of being wedged between people in the center row after a 10-hour layover. With just another 15 hours until we reached home, 5-hour layover plus the final 10-hour flight, we tried our best to just suck it up in spite of not having slept for over a day. Our luck turned for the better on the final flight as we were assigned a window and middle seat. Seating configuration was 343. Upon boarding, we realized that the aisle seat beside mine was unoccupied. Overjoyed, I took the aisle seat while my wife took the window seat. We were barely able to keep our eyes open at this point and were looking forward to getting some sleep at last. All was going well until a mom boarded with 2 kids, M11, F7, in tow. We'd seen them at the airport and could tell this was their only flight, or at least their first. They were assigned the middle row of 4 seats between the 3 of them, just a few rows ahead of us. While putting their bags into the overhead bins, the mom was scanning the other seats and spotted the empty one between my wife and I. There was no way in hell either my wife or I were going to be seated next to some other person's child. Once the doors were closed and we were waiting to start taxi stage, her son starts loudly whining about wanting a window seat.
In no time, the little brat starts crying and demanding a window seat.
The passengers around them were clearly annoyed at listening to a freaking 11-year-old throw a tantrum but were way too decent to say anything. Instead of telling her child to SCFU, the mother encourages the son to go ask passengers if they'd be willing to give up their seat, while turning around and looking at my wife and me. I woke my wife up to inform her of what to expect and told her to stand her ground if the lady asked. When the flight crew came by to check our seatbelts, they saw the woman standing up and told her to sit down and buckle up. We noticed her trying to say something to the attendant but could hear what was being said. Once up in the air and the seatbelt signs we turned off, the mother once again stands up to look in our direction, but I made sure not to make any eye contact. By then the kid had settled into his seat, but the mother was adamant on looking for some sucker to give up their window seat. Her plan was to get the son to sit somewhere else while she and her daughter could lay down comfortably across the 4 seats. Since that didn't work, she chose to keep glaring at me every time she got up to go to the toilet. At one point I smiled at her and got an even worse stare. Note to parents traveling with young kids, we get that traveling with kids isn't easy. But that doesn't mean you're entitled to have other people sacrifice their comfort to make your life easier. We all reap what we sow. I think the first time she looked your way you should have stood up, slowly shaken your head while looking her dead in the eyeballs and mouthed, "No." Then held the stare for 10 more seconds without moving your head. Either you'd get your point across clearly or she would think you were too quietly unhinged to let her son sit near safely. LOL. Either this or just yelled, "Not today, Satan." A Redditor had the perfect comeback here recently. If the plane crashes, I want to be sure the airline sends back the correct human remains to my family to bury. Now get out of my seat. Not sure you can even say that on planes these days? A lot of parents think the world should do them favors just because they decided to procreate. Careful. This logical opinion makes parents lose their shit every time. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.